2.4 goes over solving multi-step inequalities. Multi-step inequalities are pretty much identical to multi-step equations. However, when you are solving these, you have to remember about when you multiply or divide each side of your inequality that by a negative, that your inequality sign switches the way that it's open to. So if we look at example 1, we are given 1a is y over negative 6 plus 7 is less than 9. So we're going to first start by undoing any addition or subtraction before we undo the multiplication or division. So we're going to undo that plus 7 by doing the opposite and subtracting each side by that 7. So this leaves us with y divided by negative 6 is less than 2. From here, you're going to undo the division of that negative 6 and then just multiply each side by that negative 6. So these cancel. Our sign will switch. So that way we have y is greater than negative 12. Now we are graphing these as well. So on our number line, we're going to have that negative 12 as well as at least the two numbers that surround it. We are going to have an open sign or an open circle on that negative 12, and our line is going to run to the right since our sign points to the right when our variable comes first in that inequality. For example B, we have 2v minus 4 is greater than or equal to 8. So again, we're going to undo the addition or subtraction first. In this case, we have subtraction, so we'll do the opposite and add that 4 to both sides. This is going to leave us with 2v is greater than or equal to 12. From here, we divide each side by that 2. So v is greater than or equal to 6. On our number line, we're going to have that 6, as well as at least the two numbers that surround it. So the 5, the 6, and the 7. We're going to have a closed circle on that 6. And then because our variable comes first and our inequality sign points to the right, our line will run to the right as well. For example C, we have 4b minus 1 is less than 7. So we're going to add that 1 to both sides. We have 4b is less than 8. Then we just divide each side by that 4, and we get b is less than 2. On our number line, we're going to have 1, 2, and 3. We have an open circle on that 2, and our line runs to the left since in our inequality our sign comes our variable comes first and our sign points to the left. In D, we have 8 minus 9c is greater than or equal to negative 28. So we're going to subtract 8 from each side. This is going to leave us with negative 9c is greater than or equal to negative 36. We then divide each side by that negative 9. Because we are dividing by a negative on both sides, our inequality sign switches. So c is less than or equal to a negative divided by negative is a positive 4. When we go to graph this, we are going to have a closed circle on the 4. And our sign is going to point to the left since our inequality sign points to the left. And our variable comes first in our inequality. For our next example, we have n divided by negative 2 plus 11 is greater than 12. So I'm going to start this one by subtracting that 11 from each side. We have n divided by negative 2 is greater than 1. From here, I'm just going to multiply each side by that negative 2 to get n by itself. When I do so, since I'm multiplying each side by a negative, my inequality sign switches. So we have n is less than 1 times negative 2 is negative 2. So on here, on our number line, we're going to have negative 3, negative 2, negative 1, an open circle on that negative 2, and our line's going to go to the left. For example, F, we have 6 is greater than or equal to 5 minus V divided by 3. So for this one, I'm going to first subtract that 5 from each side. So we have 1 is greater than or equal to negative V divided by 3. For this, now I'm going to multiply each side by that 3. So those 3's cancel. So we just have 3 is greater than or equal to negative V. That negative cannot be in front of that V, so we're going to divide each side by that negative 1 to turn it into a positive V. And then we also switch that inequality sign to give us negative 3 is less than or equal to V. So I'm going to rearrange this to where my V comes first. So I'm just going to have V is greater than or equal to negative 3. On my number line, I'm going to have a negative 4, a negative 3, and a negative 2. We're going to have a closed circle on that negative 3, and our line's going to run to the right since we rewrote our inequality, and our variable comes first, and our sign points to the left. Points to the right. The next part of our lesson, we're still just solving these inequalities, working with multiple steps. So if we look at example A in this next section, we have 6x minus 5 is less than 2x plus 11. So I'm going to start by moving that 2x over. I'm going to subtract it from each side. So this is leaving me with 4x minus 5 is less than 11. I then add that 5 to both sides. So 4x is less than 16. And then I just divide each side by 4 and get that x is less than 4. For example B, we have 8b minus 3 is greater than 4 times 2b plus 3. So with this one, I'm going to start by distributing that 4. This is going to leave me with 8b minus 3 is greater than 8b plus 12. My next step is I want to move that 8b over and get my b's together, so I would subtract it from each side. This is going to cancel out your 8b on both sides, and you're just going to drop down the 3, your inequality sign, and that 12. So you get negative 3 is greater than 12. This is a false statement, so your answer is no solution for this one. For our next example, C, we have 2 times 5w minus 1 is less than or equal to 7 plus 10w. So I'm going to start this one by distributing the 2. So I have 10w minus 2 is less than or equal to 7 plus 10w. I'm going to bring my 10w's to one side. I subtract them from each side. They cancel out on each side. So I bring my numbers down. I have negative 2 is less than or equal to 7. Now ask yourself, is negative 2 less than or equal to 7? Yes, it's less than 7, so this is a true statement. So when you get a true statement, that's infinitely many solutions. For example, D, we have 5x minus 12 is less than or equal to 3x minus 4. So again, I'm going to work with those variables first. I'm going to move my 3x over just by subtracting it from each side. I'm going to be left with 2x minus 12 is less than or equal to negative 4. I then add the 12 to both sides, and we're at 2x is less than or equal to 8. Now I'm just going to divide each side by that 2, and I get that x is less than or equal to 4. For example, E, we have 2 times k minus 5 is less than 2k plus 5. So I'm going to distribute the 2. This is going to be 2k minus 10 is less than 2k plus 5. I subtract the 2k's from each side. They cancel out on both sides, so I have negative 10 is less than 5. Once again, this is a true statement, so we have infinitely many solutions. For example F, we have negative 4 times 3n minus 1 is greater than negative 12n plus 5.2. So again, we're just going to distribute this negative 4. We have negative 12n plus 4 is greater than negative 12n plus 5.2. We add the 12n to both sides. They cancel out on each side. So we're left with 4 is greater than 5.2. 4 is not greater than 5.2, so this one is no solution. For G, we have 3 times 2a minus 1 is greater than or equal to 10a minus 11. So again, distribute the 3. We have 6a minus 3 is greater than or equal to 10a minus 11. We're going to move the 6a over by subtracting it from each side. And I'm just doing this so that way my coefficient to my variable stays positive. So this is going to give me negative 3 is greater than or equal to 4a minus 11. I add that 11 to both sides next. And we get 8 is greater than or equal to 4a. We divide each side by that 4, and we get that 2 is greater than or equal to a. We just rearrange these terms to be a is less than or equal to 2, and then we're done. Our next example tells us that we need a mean score, so an average, of at least 90 points to advance in the next round of the touchscreen trivia game. What scores in the 5th game will allow you to advance? So it gives us 4 scores of 95, 91, 77, and 89. We know that the average is taking all of those numbers or all of those scores and dividing it by the number of scores. We need a mean score of at least 90. So whatever our average of those points is going to have to be greater than or equal to 90. So we're going to add up all of these numbers. So the 95 plus the 91 plus 77 plus 89. Now we have to play another round, so that's going to be x. If we take the average of these, we're going to divide it by the number of terms that we have there, which is 5. And that average is going to be greater than or equal to 90. So we're just going to add the 95, the 91, the 77, and the 89, and we get 352. So 352 plus x divided by 5 is greater than or equal to 90. From here, I'm just going to multiply that 5 from each side. So I get 352 plus x is greater than or equal to 450. The only thing I need to do next is to subtract the 350 from each side. So I'm going to do 450 minus 352. And I get that x has to be greater than or equal to 98. If we look at our next example, it tells us that we need a mean score of at least 85 points to advance to the next round. So what our whole issue is here is our equation or our inequality that we had in the first place is changing with that 90 to be 85. So we're going to do the same exact thing that we did for the other, and we're going to have that 95 plus 91 plus 77 plus 89 plus x all divided by 5 is greater than or equal to 85 points now. And we're just going to add those numbers up, and we get the same thing that we did before. So the 352 plus x divided by 5 is greater than or equal to 85. We're going to multiply each side by that 5. So 85 times 5 gives us 425. So that's 352 plus x is greater than or equal to 425. And then we just subtract the 352 from each side to see what x has to be. So x has to be greater than or equal to 452 minus 425 minus 352, which is 73.